The PodBarber. Coming up on today's show.
You'll listen to these conversations and you might not think, oh, that's what I'm all in, that's my thing that I want to listen to, you know, why do I want to know about her or him or whatever? But you'll find something relatable in every single one of these people. And your potential to grow will come from the conversation that you didn't think you wanted to have, that you didn't want to listen to. That's where the magic happens. That's where the growth is. Do you agree with that, Howie?
That, my friend, is the Wellbeing Project by the PodBarber. And it's an ongoing process, isn't it? As you've just exemplified. Not every subject matter would be of interest to you, you think. Give it a go. Have a listen. We've got a phrase that we'd really like to use fully. Just listen. It's that simple.
You're listening to the PodBarber. I'm championing the chat, proving conversation is the cure to better mental health and well-being. Meet my guests from all walks of life, showing vulnerability and sharing wisdom. Sit in on my chats and be part of reality entertainment. Join the PodBarber tribe. Subscribe, share and like people. Feel the sonic positivity we're pumping right at you. You, my friends, are not alone.
So who's next, please? You never have this, do you, when you do it? I'll tell you who. Got Mickey Phipps, a.k.a. the PodBarber. I mean, this is weird for me, Mick, to be doing this the other way round, but it's time to turn the spotlight on you. Turn the microphone round and get a bit about you. Not about you, actually. I want to talk about the guests that we've had in the PodBarber for Series 3 and just have a rundown and have a chat about what we've learned from these guests.
Well, thanks for the great intro. I'm a little bit nervous.
It's not quite an intro like yours, is it? But you do spend a lot of time researching your guests, our guests, and that's absolutely wonderful. So you can write a well-informed intro. I mean, I could start talking about you, international hairdresser that you are.
Barber.
I was just going to ask you, so why barber and not hairdresser? What's wrong with hairdresser?
There's nothing wrong with a hairdresser. They're just two very different trades. A barber is mainly cutting men's hair. And in that iconic barber's chair, and it's one of the oldest trades on the planet, the surgeon, as it were. It's such an important thing. Hair grows, so it needs to be cut. A women's hairdresser, they don't tend to do as many men, and it's a more fluffy service, so there's more colour, it's a much more time-consuming event. You know, a female could go in and have 4 hours, colours, tints, cut, blow-dry style, the whole caboodle. They take up a bigger refuge within your town centre or your city, wherever the shop is. It'll be much bigger. There'll be loads more chairs, and it will seem like there's less people in because you're going from one station to the next, and there's chemicals involved. Whereas really, with barbers, the real crux of it is you come in, you take a seat. Who's next, please, was the traditional old school way of doing things. And you'd get your hair cut. You might wait for your favourite barber and then you'd be on your way 20 to 40 minutes later, depending on who's cutting your hair. Nowadays, it's appointment, you know, in most modern outfits, and there's other services that are added. But for me, the barbering is like, it's the last watering hole for men's conversation. Don't get me wrong, we have loads of conversations with women. Women barbers are brilliant. But it's that last place where you can feel safe to open up. And to me, the best haircut is the one that you do underneath the skull. It's not on top of it.
Nice phrase. Yeah, so you're really shaping hair and shaping minds.
I think that's the key. I think you get this ability to build up that sort of very tactile relationship with someone. And certainly in smaller towns and stuff like that, it's repeat business. So just by the nature of it, you sort of develop these relationships and they're very intimate. And some people really engage with the conversation. They see it like a therapizing moment. And I've always seen it like that from my own personal sort of existence, my purging of my own problems, shall we say.
Yeah.
And then to then keep checking back in, and you become a barometer for the feelings of your area, for that bit of society, and you start to see and identify with different issues or positives, or, you know, some would call it gossip spreading, but I call it spreading the good word.
So that's really been the inspiration for the PodBarber.
A wisdom of listening and chatting to people and travel and personal experience, and then to think, you know, in that moment where we hit this pandemic and everybody got isolated and it was a case of survival of the fittest, shall we say. So, you know, what about me in my house? And I just didn't think like that. I thought, what can I learn to do with all this stuff that I've learned, knowing how I can benefit, how can I possibly make someone else's day a little brighter and better from the most simplest of things. That's where I paired up with you, and we decided to do this.
If you've cheered nobody else up, you've cheered me up. That's good enough. So, like you've always said, if you can help one person, well, you've helped me. So that's it.
Well, that's very charming of you to say.
It's a beautiful thing. Right, let's run through the guests that we've had on season 3. George Rains kicked it all off.
Rainsy boy.
Hey. That was really interesting when you said George is coming in, because George is what would you class him? He's a male model.
Yeah, he's a male model, and he'd had his relationship with reality TV through Love Island.
That's it. So when you said he was coming in, I thought, oh, well, pretty boy, that'll be interesting. It'll be fun. But, what kind of depth is there with a male model? How wrong was I? What did you learn from him?
I think with George, like a lot of young people chasing stardom, I was expecting the same as you to a degree, but I do know him, and I know there's a little bit more depth. I suppose because I got to know him before we sat behind mics, I knew that he'd gone through a journey, and that the best bit of him that was propelling him was the fact that he decided to sort of change his mindset and to start really looking after himself, really looking after his fitness. And that then really looked after his wellness, his mental health. And he mentioned the law of attraction. And it wasn't necessarily that he desired to go on a program like that. He was just moving forward, feeling like something would come, confident in himself. And I really liked to see that from younger people. He was starting to grow his confidence, and he wasn't making those similar mistakes like so many youngsters do, with getting caught just purely in the future dream, doing nothing about it.
It wasn't even that future dream for him, was it?
Not really, no.
They kind of came to him.
Yeah, they came to him.
Yeah. By that time, he'd sort of developed his own confidence and his own direction.
I think the nature of how he went on that show, and like how he was edited, to anyone that watched that, he basically... He was this pretty boy, voiceless Dolph Lundgren lookalike. And, to then be able to give him a microphone and say, look, actually, man, let's meet George Rains, and bigging him up. I thought he came across really well, and I thought he emphasised on the worries that would be very relatable to young people. He talked about the overindulgent of then watching his macros, that eating disorder element that so many of these young guys have got, but also that ease to drop into just wild nights and just losing it and losing yourself for a few years, which has a potential to take you down some pretty awful paths. But he sort of retaliated on himself and took himself away from certain characters, built himself up, and then he's able to then hang around with all these people again, and he knows his place and he stays consistent, and the reward doesn't happen the same level for everyone else, but I know he's doing very well. I know there's lots of people that have got far more qualifications in the fitness world who would be heavily jealous of what he's able to harvest from that. But that
mindset.
It's that opportunity to get such a following. It makes a difference. We're living in a digital revolution at the end of the day. We're going through that period of time, and he's fully taken advantage of that, and fair play to him. Let's see what happens, because he's going to carry on and he's going to get other opportunities because he's on it.
I mean, this is an early part of his journey. We'll keep an eye out. George Rains.
Yeah, Georgie Rains.
After that, we had Mark Lovell. Now, you've got quite a relationship with Mark already, haven't you? Or you had before he came in.
See, Mark Lovell for me was, even when you say his name.
Mark was the connection to Mickey's friend, who sadly took his own life a few years ago, who was also in the forces. And it was a really powerful podcast when Mark came in. The energy was a real mix of darkness and positivity. And when we got an opportunity to hear Mark's story, not just his time in the war zones, but the war with himself, as you can hear from the silence right now, it was immensely powerful.
So Mark, to me, represented one of the big pushes to do this podcast, because he he was connected to Chris Hogan.
Your friend?
Yeah. One of my very, very good friends, brother from another mother, as us boys often say. Myself and my brother chaperoned him from a young age and saw him develop from potentially being one of those people that would have ended up down a seriously wrong path. And I remember going to, this is veering off of Mark really, but we went to watch Chris pass out down in Lympstone with his mum and his grandmother.
That's the
parade,
ceremony.
Yeah, the ceremony, and it was amazing. And it was as emotional watching him do that as it is thinking of how things played out. Like probably a lot of Marines, higher developed soldiers, they've got something that most of society don't have, and if you can fashion them into a certain way of thinking, certain mindset, they're very effective at what they do. They show you the capabilities of an individual, and Mark Lovell was one of them. Moving away from Chris, because that just does upset me. Mark was in his section, and him, Chris and Ben Watley basically would meet together, and they would travel down, and it was a busy, busy time for UK forces. They were part of Herrick 9, and these young, fit lads, gun-ho, went out, and they had a busy period in Afghanistan, and it was on a Christmas Eve, as he told in his podcast, where their friend Ben got taken out, was shot in the neck after wanting to fire the Lazimir, and that one moment, amongst several others, was probably the real fire in that group of people's mental health just getting a smash. And it's not always at the time that these things affect you. It's the scarring, and it's how you reflect on it afterwards. And I think that's what we've learnt from Mark and other soldiers, is that when they're away from that brotherhood and that core and that support, unconditional love that you get, and it is an unconditional love, and it's a really beautiful thing, you become weak without someone next to you. And that's what's happened in society. And I think Mark taught us that, that you've got to put back in, you've got to give back, you've got to be there for one another, you've got to link arms. But you can only do that if you've rediscovered yourself, and that's what he did. So his real message was keep on applying yourself and stepping back up and getting yourself uncomfortable and become comfortable being uncomfortable, and take the lessons from the hardest things in life.
Being comfortable being uncomfortable. It seems to be one of the strongest messages throughout the podcasts. Tell me about your journey to discover the relevance and the strength of feeling uncomfortable. I tell you what made me think about this morning was seeing the videos of you cold water swimming and taking your daughter.
She's so cool.
How old is she?
9.
9 years old, and you got her in, 5-degree water probably?
4 or 5.
Yeah.
She's got herself in there.
But that's because of the training, the mental training you've given her over the years, the way you're raising your daughters. But that feeling of being uncomfortable, there's nothing wrong with it. It's so powerful.
I chase it, man.
When did you discover this potential?
Do you know what? I think, even because I'm an identical twin, if I was thinking about it, there's always been a bit of uncomfortableness, because at times I felt not good enough. I felt...
In relation to Jim, your brother?
Yeah, the worst twin.
Like you were in the shadow of Jim?
Yeah, at times, yeah, definitely. Like the worst twin. Do you think you
were made to feel the worst twin, or was that your perception?
No, I just think that's my perception. I don't think that. I think at times you're parented differently. The fact is, one of you probably got picked up first more often. And then you're going to have this immature response to that as you gain a little control over language, and you're going to be like, oh, you always pick him up first. Mm-hmm. You always prefer him. You always say him. You always give him it.
It would be impossible to parent two children the same, even two twins the same, because the parenting that you give is also in correspondence to the child's own energy, to the child's own personality.
Yeah, that's so.
Yours and your brother's could not have been the same personality. So then the parenting is going to be different.
100%. I suppose the thing is with myself and Jim, I'd always everyone goes, oh, you're so competitive. You're right. And it's a faculty which I look at as a good driver, because I've harnessed it to not become my ego. It's not my overruling thing. Now, maybe if I didn't beat him at everything I did.
So therefore, the dueling that you have, it's all Jim's ego.
I might be slightly more worried about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's pushed me. Even when we were kids, like we'd wrap each other up in duvets or sleeping bags, almost choke each other out, and you become resilient towards being uncomfortable in moments like that. But I couldn't tell you that I knew what I know now then, but I was already practicing the things that are beneficial to me now.
And kind of an innate feeling then, do you think? And do we all have that? Do we all have the ability?
Yeah.
Every one of us?
Everyone's got the same ability as everyone else. We're all the same. Apart from the odd person that have got so many complications, whilst you still breathe, you've got the ability to adapt a mindset, to cope with whatever's thrown at you. You might be in a different place with a different landscape to overcome, with different ailments or different things that hold you back at ages, history, the environment around you at the time. But as a human being, we all have the same ability.
Episode 3, Kristen Williams.
I loved Kristen.
Tell me about her.
Actually, she was put onto me because I thought, we need to balance this and get some ladies on the show and I was struggling to get ladies because I felt I didn't understand why they didn't want to come on, and we had a few blow us out and a few be insecure, and I'm not sure, really, I'm not sure why that is, but it's... Perception maybe, this barber dude, what's he trying to do? Getting men to speak up. But it's not. It's getting us all to speak up, getting us all to realise the importance of conversation. And what's the point of speaking up to one half of society if the other half isn't listening and trying to help what comes out when you're speaking up by shaping the debate a little bit further, getting you to lean into some different viewpoints. I like learning. I'm a dad of 3 daughters, and my long-suffering Mrs. Bev. And for me, I have to think from a female perspective because that's my environment. But yeah, with Kristen, when I heard about her, I thought this champion for young people, this woman who's taken on the awful news of losing her mum to this rare gene. So I'm interested already. I'm like, oh, wow, rare. This sounds like a bit PodBarber. And I want to dig a bit further and then to channel that energy into doing something beneficial. Well, guess what? Feels like we've got something in common. And then just to be up for it and just to be this voice of positivity.
A whirlwind of positivity, Kristen is.
An incredible, incredible woman. And yeah, with her, what did we learn? We learned everything. Resilience, that stoicism, that doing something amazing for others, that selflessness.
Absolutely selfless. That's one thing I took from meeting Kristen. Everything just came naturally to her. She just takes everything on the chin and just gets on with it and thinks, right, what's the next thing?
And helping people out and building that momentum. If no one got involved and followed her and helped expand that would knock her down. But that's just the way things are. And she's not like that because she's engaging. And if you give her the time, you want to spend some time with her.
We caught her just as she'd formed her charity, the Braca Chatter, BRCA.
Chatter, because it's all about having a natter.
That's why we had a lot in common with her. Talk it up.
She was great, and I know, and for men as well, because we've often got a female partner, or will have, or a mother, or we're in collude with the opposite sex, and it's one of the traumas that some of these lovely ladies have to go through. And
but that's interesting. Also, that's the one thing I learned from her was it's not just ladies.
No,
because it's all about breast cancer and the rare gene. But men suffer it too, or can do.
Yeah, 100,000 men. Do you know what? Funny enough, I found out about that years ago because I'm a barber. And, we've had guys with breast cancer, but I started looking into products when I started doing wet shaves because I wanted to sort of, have a row with the Turkish barbers. I was fed up of them doing all that kind of work. And I've given up, by the way. They're much better than me. But what I found was you're working an open pore. We're talking about skin now. Yeah. You heat it up. It becomes very absorbent. And what men were doing was they were spraying this cold, compressed, paraben-filled material into this open pore, which is then 10 times more absorbent.
Yeah.
you've cleaned yourself, you've opened these things, and then you're putting this stuff on and you're sealing it in with the cold water afterwards. And
nothing about that seems
well, it
right.
creates estrogen, which creates a worsening effect for breast cancer.
Right,
so
right.
We're basically following, your sort of buyer's guide, and a lack of knowledge and literacy over these things, you end up doing things that are not good for you. So I suppose the key thing to learn from people like Kristen and many of these different guests is that until you've heard from a different soundboard instead of the one that you've always listened to, you're probably doing something that you could be improving on. There's probably a little micro improvement that you can make. There's probably a little story that you could tell someone underneath you to help them not make those same mistakes. Getting that little 1% better every day, and I think that's important. And that's the PodBarber in general.
If we get 1% better every day, are you saying that after the 100th show we're there, we're done?
No, man, because I want to carry on. But the thing is, it's a perception. We're going to one step forward, two step back.
You're absolutely right, though, because even me as the producer of the show, I have learned so much, and I impart that on all my friends and family. And
how have you found them engaging and being open? And have you noticed them now, the ones that have become like the weekly listeners, that they're better at talking? Is it working?
Yes, I think obviously it's not just down to you and me, but men particularly, but I hear it in the young crowd. I speak to my son, the same. He's open to it. So where does that all come from? It's not just from our podcast. Where else in society has that change occurred?
It's not in every aspect of society yet, but there's a groundswell, and I believe it's the spiritual revolution.
Oh, I like it. Spirituality has been a huge part of my life for the last 15 years. So how do we get that spirituality into the mainstream of younger people? Because I think it's the youth, as you and I have spoken about many a time. That's the next generation. And they are suffering at their age more than you and I ever did at that age. Education is so much more stressful. The whole education process is different. Teachers have to be different.
I think with teachers, when I speak to them, there's a mixture of them now. There's those ones with their pastoral heads that do have that real deep sixth sense. They operate from there first and then try and sort of funnel their education through that. And when I get to listen to all of these people being a barber, and I then hear of the kids talking about the different lessons. They might not like the subject, but if they engage with the teacher because they're engaging and they've got that feeling, they get that frequency in that room, they all of a sudden start to look forward to RE or history if they're not into history, or geography if they're not into geography, because the teacher is so engaging. And then there's those teachers now, because of the problematic opportunities for work, you've got many failed scientists, many failed chemists, and they've gone into teaching because they couldn't do what they wanted to do because it's so competitive. And
you're not entering that profession then with 100% dedication to the cause.
But is that not in every job?
Yeah, it's in many jobs, but I don't think it has the importance.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Do you know what it is? It's because we've lost our values in the sense of as individuals. Because the thing is, it might be that one door closes, like there's 100 people turn up for the only job in a certain field, and you've all done this qualification. It's not your fault that, talking about the capitalist model of education getting you to be rinsed of your future monies because they want to sell you some crummy course with no experience. You're never going to get any experience because there's no job for you anyway. So then you've got this, you're already on a losing streak, and it's like, well, what can I do? The backup is, well, I can always be a professor. I can always. But actually, you should be looking at that opportunity and going, right, I get to bring through and inject what the energy was about what I loved. But then I can afford myself to enjoy some of the other spoils of the other things that present themselves. So instead of going through something because you feel like you have to, you should be the best of what you are with what's put in front of you. You have got choices, and even if you have to do a certain job because you have to pay your bills, you have the choice to do it really well, really professionally. And in that, the formula, you should still get the happiness and reward.
Choice.
You have the choice of how you react to it. You have the choice to think, how am I doing that? Even if you had no choice. People get imprisoned for crimes they've never committed will sit in prison, and some of them come out and say that's the best lesson I've ever learned in my life. Whereas others would perceive that as, oh my God, you've just had all this taken away, you should be compensated. And it's like, no, I've learned so much. I will now not waste another day of my life. And there's some real lessons to be learned.
I think that's such an important lesson as well, isn't it? It's like suffering is the catalyst to freedom. Some people have to hit rock bottom. We've got to allow ourselves to suffer sometimes, to hit rock bottom and to be the phoenix from the flames, a catalyst to enlightenment.
Well, that energy that you get from hitting the fire in the depths of it, and you come flying back out.
Rocket out of that.
Oh, man. That's the good shit. That's the bit that you want. You can't get that without that. If you didn't fall, you don't get to pick yourself up and practice your pop-up. And that little, that dusting down is good, man. It's like an emerging caterpillar from his chrysalis, isn't it? An eventual butterfly. It doesn't happen overnight. Why miss a step? Why not take every step and enjoy them? And it could be the last step you take. So you may as well be harvesting the goodness from every single one of them. I'm really enjoying this, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
You're really good to talk to. Do you know how important it is to have a good old chat?
This is what people think when they're talking to you. Ben Hartley.
Bentley.
Episode 4, Binley.
What
the Redster.
What a chap. Red 7.
Yeah.
What a chap. Another guy from military background.
That's true.
Great experience. Totally different kind of dude from your usual military dude. Sort of just fell into it, but was an exceptionally good pilot and flew many missions. But he's got one of those kind of drivers to just keep on doing something different and to just say yes. As a youngster, he just travelled all over the world, had a very interesting young life, and I think never had any roots, so just was never settled too much to do the same thing for too long. So he just bound into everything, but using the bits of skill that he'd learnt from the current. Put his hand up, yep, I'm in, see an opportunity and go for it.
I think that's something that really touched me about him, is his subdued positivity. He's not on the outside a bombastic, in your face.
Not at all.
He's very humble and an absolute wonderful human being. Just boundless enthusiasm for stuff on a really subdued level. Boundless, and which is proven by what he's doing now. He's a real entrepreneur.
Before Star Wars, he basically acted as an advisor, but he sort of just, again, accidentally fell into it because he was just on the edge of it, and he then saw an opening because he looked at it and he was like, right, well, you've got actors that aren't providing a realistic sort of version of what happens as a pilot, but I can show you that. And so on and so forth. It was Brad Pitt, World War Z, I think, was one of his first movies.
Yeah.
But then there was all these other members that could have had casted opportunities, and he thought, let's get me and my mates a job here. So he got the job and then got his mates on board and then eventually getting a gig on Star Wars, having all that fun and engagement in that area. And then he became a designer of furniture and glassware and worked with the Kingsman.
Yeah,
and it's still like on that.
But again, it's those opportunities that he saw, and he just snapped them up.
Says yes.
That's
Says yes.
And a real yes man, in a good way.
Yeah, and a nice dude. And I think he's just got his values in the right place. That you could call it virtue ethics, couldn't you? He's got it well
That's
practiced.
a great phrase. Yeah, exactly that. Like I said, I put it in much lamer terms than you did, that he was and does things for the betterment of others and lines his own pockets as a consequence.
It's a good fit.
But it is a consequence. It's not that he's setting out on the path of how much money can I make.
Oh, obviously that is important, but it doesn't come across. And working in the incubator space at Cambridge University, he was the man that bore the phrase San Francisco.
Yeah.
Well, he gave me the inspiration, and it is my phrase, so it's patented to me.
He's got a
so I'll be knocking on the door of Hart Binley at some point because I've got a brain filled with innovative ideas. And
you do.
But when you speak with people like that, that's what gives you that little bit of a buzz. And even now, I can hear my tone lifting because I'm thinking, whoa, yeah, love Ben.
Following Ben was almost the antithesis of Ben, Dave Minnett.
Dave, at 60-something, is still having to regularly apply himself to handle what's happened to him in those previous 60-odd years. Actually, the dude should not be alive.
I think he said that himself.
No
didn't he?
two ways about it. Not.
Yeah.
If you think of alcoholism for that amount of time, I mean, to operate a functioning heroin addict for 12 odd years at the level that he was with crack cocaine, living in that destitute kind of way, some of the stories he shared outside of the recording, they were harrowing. One particular one with as he was going to get some gear, the prostitute who had just had enough, and he was working as a scaffolder organising like 40 odd dudes, and he's rushed off to get his fix because he needed his fix, because that's the reality of being addicted to drugs, especially the opiates, as powerful as that. He's then seen this prostitute flying off of a balcony where she's just had enough, given up. You know, that's the end, because she's got to that point. She's
through drugs.
Through drugs,
Yeah.
probably drugs and the lifestyle
Also
and
the lifestyle
people,
in general, yeah, of course.
The lack of hope. And he's looked at that. You can tell he remembered seeing it and thinking, oh my God, I've still got to deal with this. I've still got to get my fix and carry on. You know.
I remember as well when he told us that story that he very quickly after the incident just thought, well, that's that, and forgot it. The more important thing for him was, where the hell am I going to get my fix from?
That's how hard those things can be for people.
Yeah. A disregard for not just your own well-being, but everybody else's. You have no concern about other people's situation in life. All you're consumed with is your needs.
Yeah,
alcohol.
It was cruel things in his life that had happened to him, from being a child, like kicked to near death at 10 weeks, and he can see that from all the police reports, to then being one of the first black people to move to a predominantly white farming background area. His life was a fight. It's no surprise that he went wrong, but I think what it really taught me was, and actually I didn't need to learn that lesson, I already had that, but you cannot judge a book by its cover, and that's a famous phrase, and there's a real reason for it. And he's the prime example for that, because if you weighed it up at his life events, you go, oh my God, you football hooligan, you drug addict, you alcoholic, leaving your kids, you know, on holidays to go and get your fix. But they're symptoms of mistreatment as a human being. We talk about suffering and what that can do in learning universal truths about yourself. But he really suffered too much.
I mean, damn, his suffering was 30 or 40 years.
Too much. That's why I would say that he's lucky to be alive. And
there is hope. You can do it.
Well, he got it from the fact that some people never gave up on him and always were there, like that resilience in others. But eventually it was just in the deepest core of himself. And you know what the key thing was? Finding his spirituality.
Yeah. After Dave, we had Errol McKellar come in.
MBE, absolute legend.
Sorry, we had Errol McKellar MBE come in, our second MBE.
Errol was wicked, man. Wicked energy.
Likened to Kristen Williams'
yeah, just
story and
to
need.
At 50, he's had his health check. Absolutely fine for his prostate PSA level. 3 years later, his missus has got him down the doctors, you know, because he's snoring uncontrollably. I dare say he's got a fairly sweet tooth, knowing how much he enjoyed
hot chocolate for breakfast. Bless him, Errol, we love you.
Probably could have avoided some of these problems with a slightly better diet and what have you, but it is what it is. And he found out that he got prostate cancer, but he didn't just got it. He was consumed by it. He had like 92% of it, went into complete shock. He's a black guy, so he didn't have that sense of talking up. You know, that came through strongly, that there is a huge lack in black community to open up.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I had no knowledge of that until Errol came in, that it's a real taboo subject. Possibly not so much now.
Well, they call it dry back, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that was a phrase he used.
You can't wee properly.
Yeah, there's a phrase for it which disassociates it from something that could be important to talk about.
But the real cruel element of that was the fact that his uncle said...
I've had that.
Yeah, and...
Oh, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
Could have avoided it.
Yeah, and he didn't speak to his uncle for months after that.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, because Errol almost lost his life.
Well, both me and you And I've said to many people at a certain age that it's important to, take the opportunity to think about your health, think about the preventative health, so screening. And I know it's not available to everybody. And again, this is what we do. We're raising awareness. It's your autonomy. It's your choice. You can say to your doctor, they can then inform you of their practice and talk you through it and educate you so your literacy improves. Knowledge is power. Take power. Use it to save yourself. Save yourselves.
but if we can help you do that as well.
But also he went on to win an MBE or be awarded an MBE because he's notably saved people's lives by being actionable with a now wisdom that he has from his own experience. So again, the message is strong.
And how beautifully selfless was he that he insists that award is for all of us, for everybody that's been part of this on his journey.
So humble that he doesn't even want to
humble.
use it. But then I think what we gave him actually was a little inspiration to see it in a different light because he's then had a different bounce, a different soundboard. And we said, no, man, you got to use that because that is now a beacon of trust of what you've done. That buys you an ear. That buys you at the higher level. So he's a huge advocate for getting into the government, for pushing from the individual pushing outwardly into the GPs, giving them the hassle to make these changes that we need, these longer term changes. And I love the fact that he sees the benefit of barbers and how we could add value. We're talking about values to one of the oldest industries, and it could be any people in the hair and beauty, with added value, with ability to talk, to listen, and then more knowledge, more literacy over these different things. We could be the signposters to help alleviate pressure eventually on GPs, on the Samaritan's mind, anything. What we can do is we can create a much carer society so that it sort of becomes like an unknown quality of UK British people.
All hail the barber.
Totally agree.
And then Bez came along. Now,
Love Bez.
Stephen Bez Berry.
Hard man. You're talking about, if you want to throw an image of like a hard man that's probably not going to talk up, that's probably going to fight his way through 20 cans of beer, like he used the phrase piss can.
Yeah, piss can drunk. I love that.
And, got married young, came through the army when they didn't have that sense of modern acceptance of spirituality and necessarily those kind of things. It was much more of a inherited, like, man up. It was men. There wasn't women in the army. There was no gays in the army. It wasn't a plural liberal area. He is a bare knuckle fighter who has just won a title, and he's IOD, Royal Engineer. He was a search team commander. There is something else because I got it wrong in his interview, but he's a whole load of shit, this fella, and that's the truth of it.
He's a whole load of
everything.
everything.
And do you know what he did? He got in contact with me. I didn't chase him. I know Bez. I got a lot of time for Bez, and actually everyone who knows Bez has got a lot of time for Bez because he's the kind of geezer that you want to watch for. If you want to demystify the stigma that men don't talk up, then that's your prime animal to do so, because he typifies everything that you would go against and some. And then he proves the military movement for spirituality and being open. He shows us how the support is. He, in his own episode, has got God knows how many downloads because of this support system. This is what I think society can do with looking at other areas of the world, looking at other countries, looking at other systems that are in place and thinking, well, why are we just looking past it? Why aren't we looking to the depths of it, to what's helping it tick and innovate and move forward? And I think that he describes that. He contacted me after listening to Cassie Ray Wardle, who is a fantastic spokeswoman for young women and a real eye-opener from Series 2 to what gaslighting is, to what manipulative relationships were. So he said, look, I've got a story. His story's still ongoing. It's going to be going on. If you could grade them, his one's right up there. So he was diagnosed with CPTSD and Stockholm Syndrome, which are in the medical world, science world, are really hot debated topics. They're really interesting.
It's quite contentious, really.
Yeah, there's no just a linear path with it. I think what we learned is that men do talk up. It's really helpful. Without it, you end up in a psychiatric ward. You end up isolated.
I think what I took from it as well is not just that men can talk up, but men can be at the suffering side of Stockholm syndrome. Because traditionally we associate that kind of thing with women, like Cassie Ray Wardle, so a manipulative and psychologically damaging relationship is usually the bloke as the instigator and the forceful one and the female suffering. This is the other way around with Bez. He got caught up with a dangerous and emotionally violent woman that suppressed his ability to understand himself, convinced him to think in a different way, which also involved gaslighting.
Because you become such a victim and your healthy ego kicks in, which is that innate response of survival. You have to feel like your life is threatened, and the only way is by doing as you're told, by conforming to what this person
But it
says.
goes beyond that, doesn't it? It's not just the conforming and doing as you're told, but it's starting to believe in the person, your captor. It's starting
you're poisoned, aren't you, in a way?
And a fear, I suppose, of then getting
fear.
out of that. Because Bez did say how long it took him to have the strength.
Well, the greatest captors work the field. They're not just working the individual. They know exactly what they're doing. Their whole life revolves around this control. So they're working your
friends and your family.
Your job, your everything.
Yeah.
So that they basically break you down bit by bit by bit by bit until there's just bits of you left.
Wow. And he got out.
I wanted to speak about it and wanted to encourage others to know that it's okay. It can get better. But also, there are some that will be sitting there. In all of our conversations, I think it's fair to say, you'll listen to these conversations and you might not think, oh, that's what I'm all in. That's my thing that I want to listen to. Why do I want to know about her or him or whatever? But you'll find something relatable in every single one of these people. And your potential to grow will come from the conversation that you didn't think you wanted to have, that you didn't want to listen to. That's where the magic happens. That's where the growth is. Do you agree with that, Howie?
That, my friend, is the Wellbeing Project by the PodBarber. Yeah, it is. And it's an ongoing process, isn't it? In fact, as you've just exemplified, not every subject matter would be of interest to you, you think. Give it a go. Have a listen. Just listen. It's 1 hour out of your day, out of your week, out of your year, if you just want to listen to one. But just listen to them all. We've got a phrase that we'd really like to use fully. Just listen. It's that simple. After Bez, we had Edward Gilday, a force for nature. For the protection of nature, but more the protection of humanity. And he was quite ardent that we realise and understand that he, as an environmental activist, isn't trying to save the planet. The planet look after itself. It's been doing it for billions of years. We need to look after ourselves. And so why are we so foolish that we can't see that actually our ego should be kicking in and we should be protecting ourselves from destruction?
The healthy ego, we just mentioned it there. The fact that we can see that so much has changed, but we're currently in the digital revolution, which is also amplifying all of what's worse about humanity, and it's holding us in this sort of psychological state of anxiety and depression, and it's stopping us from doing the next phase, which is spiritual evolution, people. It's happening, and that's coming, and that's what's going to mop up the shit that we've just been
spreading around.
You can't mitigate from one thing overnight. You have to adapt, and I think that we really touched on that. I thought Edward's experience in life, we couldn't talk about all of it because he's done a few decades and he's had an incredible experience. Clipper racing, mountaineering, seeing grandchildren, being divorced, having low moments in life, being a head teacher, was a garden designer, so he's worked back with the planet. He's then breathed as one when he talked about helming. He's looked at how he could affect people and give knowledge and expertise and literacy to people. He then now does that for free, but he's trying to inspire different generations, different businesses to wake up and realise that we need to do stuff, we can do stuff. So he was able to rally the churches and cathedrals and bell ringers. So cool. It's a movement of togetherness. And what he realised is all of these amazing things that he's done, imagine the admin on some of the stuff that he's done and the cost and actually the greenhouse gases to create some of these things.
Yeah.
But basically he sent letters out saying, I've got a good idea. Why don't we ring the bells for climate change? He thought someone else might have done it. It's like, no one did, mate. They hadn't thought of that.
No, that's it.
So guess what the message is?
What an innovator.
If you've got this deep sense of something simple that hasn't been done, that's the innovation. That's the little bit that you've got to sort of start to massage until it sort of grows. And just try it to failure. Why not?
Yeah, and if you do fail, take it to Ben Hartley and get him to make it work.
Or someone else might learn from that failure and then combine that. So don't hold on to your idea to the point that it never gets revealed, because it's a good idea.
Until it's proven to not be such a good idea, it's a great idea.
It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And do something with it. Roll with it. But Edward was charming as well to talk to. And
lovely man.
I think what it does is, from a non-academic human being like myself, this is another thing. Being open to being involved with different conversations and different people, as I am, and I love to do, I see the growth that I can get from someone else. I cannot grow on my own. I've listened out for lots of things. I've jotted down a few notes, and those things have stuck, and it's given me a little bit more purpose. It's given me a little bit more that I can pass on, which I do around my barber's chair. I spread these things. I create debates. We start to lean into different things, and it helps inform me of my next day's thinking. And I'm not saying that it's finite either. It's just got so much potential to keep on meandering, moving.
Final guests on season 3.
The Wade twins.
Henry and William. What a force.
Man, those two energy bunnies have got...
Energy bunnies. I love it. They probably wouldn't take too kind to be called energy bunnies. I don't know.
I don't know, man. They're full of energy.
Absolutely amazing.
I've known them for years, and the family, and they come from good stock.
Yeah.
They're lovely boys. They've got that kind of character, that 6 foot plus frame that could intimidate anyone.
But
they're so friendly.
When they walked through the door of the studio or breakfast room, it was anything but like 6'3" each, and with a force. I mean, they are just so in your face, but in such a charming, gentle way.
Yeah, they're cool characters. And I think the thing, many things that we can learn from having identical twins is that you can see, firstly, the differences in their cadence of speak, in their attitudes. I can tell you about myself and Jim, but we've had two people who seemingly look very similar with very different viewpoints, and they're both got their own take on what they want to do, and they're both going to do their own things, they're together things, and I think it's great. So it's important to work on your own self before you come to work with others. It doesn't have to be your twin, because not everyone's so fortunate to have an identical twin like I and the Wade twins. But what you'll get from those guys is the modern younger man can learn from them. You want to get into the social digital arena. You want to create content. You want to stand for something. You got to be prepared to stand up and get the wet cabbages and your soggy tomatoes thrown at you, because you're putting yourself on a stage. And it's difficult. It's difficult to make a noise in a noisy arena, unless you've got something that's got so much that eventually will catch because of the content. It's got so much meaningfulness in. If you're just representing brands, if you're a fashion horse for modelling the latest clothing, no one can remember you. So how do you then develop that further intimate side? And that's where they're working.
Hard work, really hard work for many years. That's what they've done.
They've done that, and now they're looking to champion their own chat in their own field and bring conversation as the cure. They're keen on podcasts. They see the importance of this. They've got a couple more followers on their pages than us. The important thing is what they put into that ear and how they put that out. And if they can have the kind of chat that they had with us and build on that and grow into that and understand and learn more about listening as well as talking, then they'll be very successful, because they've got such a way with them, and their content as well. They are proper up there.
Stunning, isn't it? As I recall, we didn't touch much on within the podcast with them about it, but I wanted to ask you the question of, do you think that their way of presenting brands is the new modelling, pulling it away from the catwalk? I mean, it's like a one-stop shop they have. They are producers, they are photographers, cameramen, they are actors. They are obviously two very good-looking dudes. as models, but they're doing the whole thing themselves. They meet with the companies, they discuss the project, they work out a strategy for the brand. It's just two guys doing all of this. I mean, they've got some serious talent. Do you think that'll take away gradually from what we know as the modelling world?
I think there'll be a
brands?
transition, like there is in anything. It's not going to happen overnight.
Of course not.
But I do think that if you're someone creative, if you've got an eye for bringing something slightly different, and you're willing to YouTube how to do this, it just goes to show you don't have to conform to the normal routes of employment. You can have this. There is that facility. And I suppose in the same way with George Rains, the modern presenters, how far do they go? How much do the big boys then kick back, or how much do they start to collaborate with the smaller boutique offering? I don't know. I think you'll see better relationships, and I think you'll see a better spread of equity in and around content creation.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too, is that you're going to have many more fish in the pond, but many more fish with many more ideas rather than just the big boys.
It's got to be better, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, what are we trying to do? There's God knows how many podcasts, and I know that we are in the top 1% of all podcasts. Forget whether it's any good, whether you think the sound's good or the production or our guest or what I say. It doesn't really matter. But we are there because we've got stick-to-itness, because we've got some belief of what we're doing. The strength of what we want to achieve, it comes only when you start listening, and not just a minute reel or a couple of seconds here and there. You're not going to learn what you need to learn. And it's not from me, it's the process, and it's becoming part of the chat on the day. It's that's the one thing.
Sorry, did you say it's not about you, all of this? Is that what you said?
Scrub that, because it's everything about me, because I'm the...
So all of a sudden my editing skills are going to be really crap. And, all of that staying in. I'm not taking any of this out, by the way. This is just one big, long chat.
I think it's good. I think we need that. I think that's the thing. You shouldn't have everything so sterile and polished.
No.
Because you miss out on stuff. And it's nice to... Like, I look at it like we mine gems from these individuals. Because we do the research, we know where to look and dig. You know, we've talked about miners and how humanity is a mining society, and that can be beneficial or very negative, but it's something. And we basically pull this diamond, rough diamond, out, and without that execution of that beautiful polishing is what you do, and I will big you up for it because you are one of the best at it. We highlight this conversation, we highlight this person, this sentiment for everything that it's meant to be. And that's why those who choose to continue to listen, and the building tribe that we do have, they're not just pressing like. There is engagement, and that's different. We multiply that, and we will help people. We are helping people because there is that element of that, because of how we are just shining up around the edges. It's not egotistical, but I am a fan of my own show, our show, The People's Podcast, on the basis that I look forward to hearing how you curate from your element for the basis of how you think that the listener will relate best to. You're everything, people, if you're listening to this. It's all about you. It's everything about the guest, and it's about me and Howie's interpretation of what we can do to make it better for everyone.
I was going to say we've reached the point in the show where I have to do a roundup like you do, which I couldn't possibly begin to do. So no, you've just done it. Perfect. So thanks very much for being my guest today, Mick.
It's quite all right, man, anytime. You're most welcome, and you've invited me into your studio, you've invited me into your life, and it's important that I show gratitude for that, because I wake on every day and I'm thankful for Howie Fiddy and everything that you do.
The feeling is very mutual. We do have a bit of a bromance, but for the betterment of the world.
Yeah, it's big. It's massive.
Mickey the PodBarber, before we go, what about next season? Who have we got coming up?
I'm extremely excited to bring breathwork to the forefront.
Oh, at last. That's a big thing for you, isn't it?
Love it.
And it's become a big thing for me.
And everyone.
I'm spreading the word too.
There is a volcano of hot air that sits in between us. It's called tremo breathing. But there are all sorts of designs of these holistic prescriptions which will help you, which will aid you, which will cure arthritis, eczema, psoriasis, all proven.
Hey, let's not get into the details of
I can't help it. I'm getting excited
about
it.
Save some. So we've got that. What else?
We, at the start of this whole project, we have had this bubbling notion that we must help children, and we know that they're not often listening to the podcast, but by the parents and the next generation of parents listening, who are the listenership, they have the facility to be improved to then help, when they're going through the tribulations of parenthood. And it is an absolute minefield.
We can speak with authority on that.
That's the thing. There is an authority.
Yeah.
And nothing's perfect, but we can make some practice and hopefully get a little bit better at it.
So in that respect, then, we have guests in season 4.
We are collaborating with some teachers from our local school, because this is our community, and if we're going to do something for the whole world, we better just map it out here first, don't we, and make sure that these things work, and let's see if we can make a difference. And sadly, we have to be acceptant of the fact that the survival of our young people is to stop them from taking their own lives. And that is currently the worst killer of young people. And that sounds horrible to hear it and totally dramatic. But let's just put it out there. The ladder of mental health, at the moment, there are more climbing down to the depths of it than steadying themselves and walking up and away from it. So we're hoping that we can work with some teachers, with some people with their real pastoral heads on, with our local school, on celebrating what the movement's happening up there, how we can raise funds for this special space to give people the place to talk. It will signify the curation of a community coming together. It will bring us together if we simply let it, by listening and by encouraging people to speak, and give it some time and celebrate the kids for what they're doing, celebrate the parents for what they're doing, celebrate the teachers for what they're doing, celebrate the hierarchy of the teaching for what they are doing. Let's not dwell on all the negatives for a change. Let's see if we can reframe it and look for those lessons that we talk about, that we can see, and magnify that and roll with it. We're going to learn about a bit of science, psychotherapy. We're going to learn about creativity and art. I'm excited.
I can't wait. Season 4 is just around the corner.
If I was to have one message for anyone that listens, or if they think that they can't do anything, or that they're in a bad way, and it does sound like a bit of a beg and a plea, and I'm on my hands and knees at the moment, please share what we're doing. Please engage us on social media. Help us help others, because we're putting it out there. We're consistently turning up for you lot every single day, and ourselves, because we're not giving up.
Damn right.
We need your help.
Mickey, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure being within this wonderful voice booth. I was going to say talking to you, but listening to you, because that's what it was all about, is for you to impart a little bit more of the knowledge that you have that I cut out in the edits.
That's fine. You get drip fed me a little bit every day.
Good.
That's not
all
the
about the
important
guest.
thing.
No, it's the message from the guest.
On the inside of here, because I'm a big believer in the conversation that happens inside, the energy.
Yeah.
You sit on the outside and sometimes don't pick up on that. It does make a difference when you're in person, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, very much.
There's so much to be said. Our phones are down. There's no distraction. We're eyes on each other.
Yeah.
In the silences, I feel it. I'm present. We're on it. This is not rehearsed. This is not practice. There's nothing. We've had a bit of breakfast like we always do. Saffron Whole Foods, big shout out. We've had some nice coffee. We had a great chat with Chloe.
And then straight in here. Start talking.
It's important. Conversation is the cure.
I have 3 words: peace, love, and power to your day, Mick.
Thank you, man.
The PodBarber is a That Media and Design production, with Mickey at the mic and Howie at the controls. If you've been affected by any of the topics in this show, you can find more helpful information on the episode's page at thepodbarber.com, and search The PodBarber on social and let's get connected.